Welcome to literary and jury charge practice. Let's get started with this short jury charge. Get our fingers moving. Ready? Here we go. Members of the jury, every person who testifies under oath is a witness. You are the sole judges of the believability of a witness and the weight to be given the testimony of each witness. In determining the believability of a witness, you may consider anything that has a tendency in reason to prove or disprove the truthfulness of the testimony of the witness, including but not limited to any of the following: the extent of the opportunity or ability of the witness to see or hear or otherwise become aware of any matter about which the witness has testified, the character and quality of that testimony, the demeanor and manner of the witness while testifying, the existence or non-existence of a bias, interest, or other motive, evidence of the existence or non-existence of any fact testified to by the witness, the attitude of the witness toward the action in which testimony has been given by the witness or toward the giving of testimony, a statement previously made by the witness that is consistent or inconsistent with the witness's testimony, an admission by the witness of untruthfulness or the witness's prior conviction of a felony. The fact that a witness has been convicted of a felony, if such be a fact, may be considered by you only for the purpose of determining the credibility of that witness. The fact of such a conviction does not necessarily destroy or impair the witness's credibility. It is one circumstance that you may take into consideration in weighing the testimony of a witness. A witness willfully false in one part of his testimony is to be distrusted in others. You may reject the whole testimony of a witness who testified falsely on a material point, unless you believe the probability of truth favors his testimony in other particulars. Now we'll try some literary material. And the subject of this literary is a real estate case. Ready? Here we go. As previously stated, the frontage of the property is a curving line, and the actual improvements that were going from the northerly part of the property were in a straight line along the frontage, and then there was an extension out toward the boulevard. Then there was another straight line back to the south. At the immediate front and the south portion of the building there was an entrance into the building by means of a flight of stairs. It was a short flight of stairs, a landing, and then it went into the building there. The entrance area led into the general offices and into the private offices and into the rest of the building. I have measured this, so I think it is reasonably accurate. The part that is actually being taken away I have denoted by means of a red crayon that runs across the frontage part of the building, and this is the portion which is, generally speaking, the Roman brick part of this building. By means of quite a bit of study, I found what uses this whole building was being put to, what the flow of traffic of the business itself was, and studied the application and uses of this company. I also ascertained the needs of this structure and of this operation. Incidentally, The operation, as I find it, is one that operates 6 days a week and on 2 shifts every day. It operates 6 days a week with a great lot of overtime. Actually, it amounts to about 2.5 shifts, 6 days a week, in order to operate this business that they have. At the front of the building, as I say, are located the main entrance to the building, the 2 private offices, and then there is the processing and production room where they have all this heavy equipment. They have certain customers that have ads and so forth, which are repeated. Once those ads are set up, they are put on the computer and put in for storage until the next month's or next week's publications come out. Now back to some jury charge. Ready? If you can, you should ever keep in mind the importance to the accused of the result of your deliberations, and be just to him as well as to the people of the United States. Both the public and the defendant have a right to demand, and they do so demand and expect, that you will carefully and dispassionately weigh and consider the evidence and the law of the case, and give each your conscientious judgment, and that you will reach a verdict that will be just to both sides, regardless of what the consequences may be. Ladies and gentlemen, the instructions of the court are now completed, and the case is about to be submitted to you for decision. When you retire to the jury room, you will elect one of your number as a foreman, and such person will sign the verdict to which you may agree, and such person will represent you in the courtroom as your spokesman in the further conduct of this case. You may have exhibits brought to you and the indictment brought to you if you desire to see them. If you will notify the crier, they will be delivered to you in the jury room. The 12 jurors in the case may now retire to the jury room. The crier, I'm assuming, is the clerk. This is apparently an older jury charge. All right, let's try this jury charge. The subject is government securities. Ready? The problem of how to maintain a healthy government securities market is one which must be attacked cooperatively by all of us. Huge as its operations are, the Treasury employs no underwriters in the usual sense of the term. The underwriting responsibility is in effect shared by the entire financial community. Within this community, the Treasury's debt management goals are, I believe, fairly well understood. It is recognized that the Treasury should rely as little as possible on debt ownership by the commercial banking system. It should make every effort to lengthen the debt so as to keep the number of financing operations at a minimum. In addition, it should generally conduct its operations so as to interfere as little as possible with the freedom of action of the Federal Reserve in its monetary operations. Although there is general agreement on these goals, how best to work toward them and how best to protect the market from disruptive influences raises difficult questions on which there is no unanimity of opinion. You are all familiar with the principle that the Treasury should seek to sell long-term bonds during periods of prosperity when the tightening effects which their sale may have on the money market would be in harmony with a policy of monetary restraint. Similarly, it is said that during periods of recession, the Treasury should contribute to liquidity and to the availability of capital by doing most of its financing in the short-term area, which will be largely absorbed by the commercial banks. This is called a film editor's testimony. Ready? Well, we will compile all of the film that was shot on the set by the shooting company. Then we might use film that has been shot at some other time. It might be stock film or come from a documentary or from other sources. The first thing we would do in the cutting room would be to sketch out the narrative of the picture in the various scenes. Then we augment that narrative by adding the detail to each scene that was shot. The original of a scene will be too long. There would be repetition of action. There may be a long shot, and the same thing is repeated in a close-up. In the first assembly, each one of the sequences will be put together in a basic rough pattern. Then we run the whole picture. It will generally be twice as long or longer than the finished picture will be. The editing staff will sit down and watch the film. They will talk about the whole run and look at it from the narrative standpoint and the overall effect. They will be asking about what story the picture tells. They will be determining that the details can be shaped up and reduced in size and effect so that they will come off as they were designed to come off. This whole narrative is laid out, strengthened, cemented together, and then the detail work on each scene is gone into by the editor with the supervision of the director. We take each sequence, run all of the film that has been shot. We assemble the particular sequence and create a kind of style in that sequence. This is related to the prose and the syntax. A style is created. Perhaps one picture will have a fast pace. Another one should have poise and flow from one sentence to another. In the film under discussion, there are a variety of styles, and they conflict with one another to create a kind of excitement. Then the mood will change. This literary from our Journal of Court Reporting magazine, and the subject of this article is "You've Got This." Ready? Failing can help you improve. I cannot share my journey without giving homage to God, who is always faithful. When my mother died, I asked God to help me draw close to Him. I was devastated when I didn't pass the 2008 California court reporting examination because I felt I needed to start paying off some of my debts. What was I going to do? A classmate invited me and other classmates over to her house. One of my classmates had just passed the CSR examination. She introduced me to CART, and I fell in love with the idea of providing CART. From 2008 to 2012, I had a spiritual awakening, so I leaned on my faith and drew closer to God. Learning about CART and my faith both spurred me on to continue taking the CSR. My friends and instructors from Cerritos College and Downey Adult School and I were perplexed. I passed around 30 qualifiers at school, even as I continued to take and fail the state exam. I even received my 240 word per minute PIN. What's up with that? As I prepared for each test, we were sure I would pass. Every time from my first test to my sixth test, and so on, I thought surely this will be the test I pass. Test takers are allowed to miss 50 words total. One year I had 51 errors. I tried hypnosis DVDs. I prayed every morning asking God to show me what I needed to do to pass my test. After test number 11, I was dumbfounded. Everyone told me I was probably nervous. However, I did not agree with that. Excuse me. We will get back to that later. Let's try a little more jury charge practice. Excuse me. All right, ready? Here we go. These principles, as you know, have presented difficulties in practice. The Treasury has found that there are few made-to-order occasions for substantially lengthening the debt. The opportunities which do arise are infrequent, and they are not necessarily linked to any particular phase of the business cycle. There were some who criticized the Treasury for its debt extension efforts during the past year on grounds that we should sell only short-term issues during a recession. On the other hand, if we had done all of our financing in the one-year area, our debt would be indefensibly short as we take on the serious problems of a period of sizable debt expansion. The issues are made clearer by a quick glance at the changing government ownership pattern during recent years. Since 1952, the government security holdings of individuals and personal trusts have increased somewhat on net balance, as have the holdings of commercial banks. Ownership on the part of retirement funds of state and local government and the government investment accounts is up substantially. Corporation holdings are down, but the liquidation here has been in the short-term area, as corporate liquidity varies with the economic cycle. A matter of considerably greater concern is the sharp drop in the government security holdings of non-bank financial institutions. This poses a tough problem for the Treasury because of its effect on the longer-term debt picture. These institutions, of course, have played a major part in helping finance the growth of the economy during the past decade. However, in view of the size of our government debt today, and with deficit financing looming large, there are important responsibilities on the part of private investment institutions for aggressive assistance in the Treasury financing job. as well as in the industry financing job. To a large extent, the market for Treasury securities, apart from savings bonds, is an institutional market. The flow of personal savings today also goes predominantly through institutions such as insurance companies, banks, and pension funds. When the great institutional holders of the nation's savings do not buy Treasury securities, the Treasury must turn to the commercial banks. This means increased bank credit, a larger money supply, and new inflationary pressures. To the extent that inflation results, the customers of these savings institutions are among the chief victims. Some tell us that the actions of a single institution in a competitive market can have little effect. Others tell us that they cannot buy Treasury bonds to fight inflation when their competitors are obtaining better yields elsewhere. Our conduct cannot be guided exclusively by these considerations, since it is the goal of financial institutions to help protect the purchasing power of the savings entrusted to them. They must look not only to the immediate results of their actions, but to the ultimate economic consequences as well. There are a number of possibilities for improving holdings in the non-bank area. We are now carrying on an extensive program of study and consultation on all phases of debt management. A number of groups in and out of government have been asked to join with us in studying the overall debt management problem and to come up with specific suggestions for improved techniques and procedures. And that will conclude our literary and jury charge practice.